I thankfully haven't had to make a very hard apology. I mean, other than like family members of patients, if they're unaware that their family members died or something like that, it's really tough. But thankfully I have people in my life that make, everybody messes up, so they understand that it happens. You have to apologize and recognize that you mess up.
It's gotta be to my sister. She's a couple years younger than me. We're friends now, but when we were younger, I probably wasn't the nicest to her. I think that's a very big sibling thing. But as you get older, you kind of reflect on that. And just one day I realized, I don't know, I think it impacted her more than I thought it did. And then, so one day I just sat her down and I was like, I'm glad we're friends now, but I'm really sorry for these things that I did. And she was really grateful for that. I think that was probably the one that affected me a lot. And that was hard to swallow my pride a little bit on that. But I think it made us better for it. We're definitely good friends now. So it was definitely, yeah. Probably when I was in college, so a couple years ago. She's younger. Yeah, so I was a little bit of a menace as an older sibling, but we reflect on it and we get better.
I have apologized to some friends, some past relationships. I realized that at one point, and I had to learn from it, but I was bringing in my past relationships into current ones. And, friendships, I brought past friendships into other friendships. So I was really learning how to, better myself in that aspect where I don't do that anymore. Some of the hardest apologies I've had to make is just, having those stupid feuds with friends and all that. And then coming back later going, I was dumb. That was on me, not on you. And then just kind of explaining myself, I know this doesn't change anything of what I did, but just the human aspect of we're all gonna have faults. Just learning to own up to your faults and accept it for what it is.
The hardest apology I've ever had to make was to myself. I grew up in a very unconventional household where I had two siblings who lived in different continents, and I've always dreamed of being able to be reunited and have a big family. And when the opportunity presented itself to have that, it was just a huge disappointment. But it was because in my head, I had it pictured as a big cohesion of a family. In reality, I think I was just always happy with myself and having my parents there, being the immediate family. The biggest apology I've had to get was to myself, to my younger self.
Oh, wow, the hardest apology is when I have offended others in my behavior, having to apologize and ask them to forgive me. And that was hard. Fortunately, it was a lot of years ago. When they say time heals all wounds, time is necessary for people to know that you actually have changed and you actually are not the person that you were then. My actions were wrong. I'll leave it at that. I won't go into detail, but it was wrong. It's difficult to answer that without talking about the things that I had done, but I just made sure that I never put myself in a position where I would do what I did before. And so I definitely changed the kind of places I would go, the kind of work I would do, and the people I would associate with. All changed.
The hardest apology for me was probably to my parents of them guiding me through a situation that me as a fairly young adult that I thought I knew all the answers and I was right, and my parents never said, I told you so, but I did go to them with respect and, said I'm sorry, and they in turn, in loving way, give me a hug and said that that's okay, that they were there for me, but that was pretty tough for me. It was pretty tough, especially when you think you're right, and then you find out they were right, and yeah.
Mine has to do with my parents, too. It was where I was going through something rough, and my mom tried her best to help me, and I didn't realize that at the time. And she was just on my side, and I didn't really realize that all she was trying to do was help until one day we had a sit-down conversation about it, and I cried and apologized a lot. It was very hard.
I told my wife my entire history. I didn't know if she would stay with me because we were still dating. And I think it was a whole lot to take in. And she was like, I don't compare, but it was like she was on a way better path than I was. And I was on a completely different path. We somehow met. And then I had to show, hey, this is what I used to do. Do you still want to do this? And she took me in, she accepted me. She understood that I am different, and it's an ongoing struggle. So being able to say that I was different and prove that I'm continuing to be different, I guess is kind of how that's an apology, maybe. I'm still reminded of past life and how it used to be, and how I used to be super into it. But I have to choose different every day. So I think it does help. She helps me to choose different and keep me on a better path.
When I apologized to my mom from yelling at her, and we got in a really big fight that night, and we both said some really hurtful things to each other, and it really changed our opinions on each other for a good while. And I had to apologize because even though she hurt me, I wanted my mom back, so I had to be the bigger person, step up, and now we communicate and we're really good. I see her a lot more. We're really happy. She just thought I was out doing crazy stuff just because I didn't have my location on, and I was just eating at El Rodeo. Nothing too crazy.
To my mom, I fuck up a lot, so saying sorry to her is weird because I'm not really close to nobody, so saying sorry in general is just but yeah, probably to her. We get in fights all the time, so saying sorry to her is kind of hard.
Talking to my deceased husband about some personal things that went on in my life. I don't know if that's necessarily an apology. And to him, because when he was growing up, I probably wasn't the supportive mother I should have been. But I don't know if those are, I guess we could consider those apologies. Raising him, I would have thought less about myself and more about my children. It was at a time where I was divorced. I've always been a working mother. Being divorced, I was thinking more of myself and not taking care of my children as I should have. Not that they were neglected, they just didn't get they didn't really get the care they should have had.
When I drove a golf cart into the James River, I had to apologize for thousands of dollars of damage. I was at a national forest campground, and they let you rent golf carts, and so they don't like underage people driving them, and it broke, and then as I was turning it broke, and so it just turned and went right off the bank into the James River. And yeah, and I also, the guy who was riding with me just had surgery, and so I had to apologize to him because he had it on his shoulder and he reached out and got pulled out of the golf cart and broke everything, so I had to apologize to his doctor for that one. And so yeah, that's probably the hardest apology I've ever had to do.
My hardest apology, it's not anything like his. It's more like I had to apologize to my siblings when I again switched houses because they're like, why are you leaving? And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I have to do this for myself, and that was pretty hard.
Probably whenever I was lying as a kid, all of those were pretty tough because in the moment I knew it was wrong when I lied and when I got caught lying. So those are always hard because I don't know why I would make that choice to begin with, but I still did. So those are always tough apologies to make. I just remember just being disappointed in myself a lot, especially as I got older. So probably lying, apologizing for that to my parents kind of sucked.
There was this one time when I was a kid, and those mobile games, right? How you just can like buy things on the mobile games. So I was like so young. I was like, oh, I just clicked this button and I can get free coins, and I kept doing it. And then my mom came up to me and she's like, hey, I'm down like thousands of dollars. What are you doing? And I'm like, oh no, I'm so sorry. I felt so bad because I didn't really connect like that I was actually spending money. So that was the worst. Oh my gosh, I felt so bad. I think I was like 7 or something.
Honestly, probably moving to Indiana. My family was not supportive, not as supportive as I thought they would be, and they really wanted me to stay closer to home. But I felt like it was better for me to move, so I continue to make that apology, especially since coming home, because it was the right thing to do at the time, but it wasn't the right thing to do in the long run. So I did apologize for that.
I think one of the hardest apologies I've ever had to make, I was on this super long day, and one of my friends decided to come with me, and she wasn't prepared for it, and it almost killed us both, where I felt terrible because I put us in such a terrible situation where I had to come to her and basically ask her to forgive me while apologizing immensely and like taking the opportunity to learn from that situation that I put ourselves in, like to be happy that we're out of that situation, but also hurt our friendship because you can't go back from something like that. That was pretty dangerous.
I had a good girlfriend who had dated a guy for a long time, and they had broken up, and I decided that I was going to hang out with him and make out with him and that kind of thing, and I actually had to tell her that and apologize to her. So it was a big one. It was just sort of a code thing I shouldn't have done, so yeah.
For my mom, like, I had so much resentment for her because like she passed away, and I just like blamed her for like leaving me by myself, knowing that like it's like it wasn't her fault that she passed away. Obviously, like it was just a natural cause, and I was like just holding that grudge. And it's like I apologized for her for the way I felt. Like, you know, it was like it's not your fault. It was like, you know, and like for having so much resentment for her for many years. I think what let me go is getting connected more to God. I feel like I started to did confirmation classes, and I think that helped me a lot of understanding like how life is. And then, you know, it's like people don't decide to just leave and die, you know. So yeah.
When I was younger, this was actually the time about a few months before I met Daryl. I was going to be sent away to a military school a little bit before I was 18, knowing that I could get out when I was 18 still. It cost around $50,000 to send me to that military school, and it was $10,000 cash up front and to get me through the first 3 months. And so my dad had that stash, and so I took that and went away for a long time and never came back. And I've recently told him I'm sorry about that, you know, not about a year or two ago. I didn't want to go to military school. It was across the country, and I didn't understand it at the time, but now I do. Oh, he did. He did accept the apology, and now we talk almost every day. We didn't talk for quite a few years before that.
The hardest apology I had to make was to myself. I had to learn how to forgive myself. That was the hardest apology to make. It's easier to forgive somebody else, but forgiving yourself in the long run, that's the one that hurts the most. I'm a recovering addict, and on top of hurting the people I loved and cared about, I hurt myself a lot too. And my turning point was the rock bottom of my addiction, where I was using to die. And I had to forgive myself for the things that I did to myself.
Actually, recently, yeah. So my sister actually, she wrote a book. She's senior in high school this year, and she's been writing it for like a year. It's like Race with Your Heart or something like that. Currently reading it, you know, I'm making up for my flaw. But over the time she was writing it, I was at college, you know, I was away, and, you know, I never really got the opportunity to like support her through that and to be like, hey, you know, you're doing a really cool thing here. You know, good job or whatever. You know, I had no idea she was doing something like that. And it's like, you know, it's like a 300-page full-fledged book. Like, that's cool. That's good for her, you know? I could not do something like that. And I feel kind of bad that I didn't get the opportunity to, like, egg her on or something like that. And, you know, today I went up to her and I was like, hey, you know, I'm sorry that I'm sorry that I wasn't really supportive through that. I wasn't 100% sure that you were doing something. I didn't even know about it. Like, and she's like, yeah, I told you. And I was like, oh, but I didn't realize it was like a full-fledged thing. But it was more of like, I apologize and, oh my goodness. Full-fledged apology, I feel like I didn't get it out. You know, I don't feel like I was able to fully express, like, you know, that I was sorry, that I wasn't able to be there for, you know.
Probably after breaking up with somebody. Like, you realize you're not as into them as you thought you were. Because people. Feelings are weird.
The hardest apology I've ever had to make was apologizing not to anyone in particular, but maybe myself in a sense. There's been some times when I've kind of blamed things on myself when they weren't necessarily my fault, and sometimes all you got to do is take a step back and think about what you did, what you've done, what consequences came out of those actions, and really apologize to yourself, not as much in the sense that you feel sorry for what you did, but that you acknowledge what you did was wrong and that you can grow and change from what you did. And I don't think it's as much the apology part to yourself as much it is recognizing what you've done and learning to grow and change from those actions.
One of my friends, or my ex-friends now, this was all me pretty much, but like their crush, I had a crush on as well. And I asked them, I was like, hey, like, is this okay? And they, I guess, pretended it was okay and it wasn't. And we started dating, and I could tell he was upset. So I regret that. But I mean, it's hard for me to say I regret things though, because I wouldn't learn from it if I didn't do it. But I mean, I guess that answers your question, what would I redo? That's one of the things I'd redo. And it was hard for me because he was my friend and it was my fault. So it's something I shouldn't have done. So it was like, okay, swallow your pride and apologize, you know, like you hurt him and it was not nice.
With my children there, we were all going through a lot of hurt and anger. Their mother had also passed away 6 years ago. So I apologized for maybe not being as sensitive to their grief because I was struggling with my own. But we are forgiving and loving each other, and we're in good relationships. So it worked out, but it was hard.
I guess to my girlfriend, because I wasn't really completely honest with her. I ended up getting incarcerated on something that I didn't even do, but due to my background, they didn't really look into it. They just went off of an accusation, and my probation got violated. I ended up serving a little over a month in jail, and my beautiful girlfriend didn't know anything about my past. She just knew that I'm now a hard-working car guy that has a house and stuff. She learned I used to be a drug dealer when I didn't come home from work one day. And that was a pretty interesting apology there, because I had to explain, for one, why I'm in jail, and for two, you know, what led up to this point. Because, you know, I woke up that morning, kissed her goodbye, and left to go to work. I didn't come home. She stayed with me. She stayed with me. I called her every day while I was in jail. I only spent a month, and they figured out that the charges against me, my father, ironically enough, has the same name as me. He's a junior. I should be a third, but I have a different middle name. He caught a drug charge. We have the same probation officer, so she just immediately assumed that it was me, violated my probation, and I went to jail for something my dad did. when I was sitting in court, my lawyer came back and they had all the like guidelines and stuff for my sentencing on a distribution charge that I didn't know anything about. I'm like, look, I've been clean for 3 years. I don't. And they came back, the date of birth was August 7th, 1956. And I think I look pretty good for 70. And after they figured out that the person in question indeed was not me, even though our addresses were eerily similar, our names are eerily similar, we're not the same.